Today on the channel, it's the return of the Kyle Peterson Top 5 with one of my all-time favorites, Roddy Piper. Welcome everyone, Kyle here, and welcome back to the channel for the second edition. This is the second episode in the Kyle Peterson Top 5. This is going to be a continuing series that we're going to do, and they're going to drop new videos every single Thursday. And it's where I will count down my top 5 individual figures, maybe lines of figures. We could do Star Wars, we could do Marvel, we could do NECA Ninja Turtles, we could do wrestling. There really is no limit to these lists that we could do of these top 5s. But for now, I'm going to stick for wrestling for a little bit, but we'll branch out. Give me some ideas out there in the comments down below. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel, of course. Make sure you like this video. Follow me on social media at Twitter at SirPaul64, Instagram _Kyle_Peterson, and of course, Pro Wrestling Tees Kyle Peterson. But today's top 5 list was one I said, who am I going to do number 2? And one caught my eye, and I said, you know what, we're going to do him right now. We're going to do him at number 2, and that is the Hot Rod Roddy Piper. One of my all-time favorite wrestlers, wrestling characters, might as well call it movie stars as well. I love Roddy Piper. It's interesting for me, growing up with Roddy Piper, I was just a little bit too young to get the WrestleMania 1 and 2 experience. I did, however, my first memories of Roddy Piper were shortly after WrestleMania 3 was when I became a wrestling fan, and that is when he retired. That was the end of his road, so that was kind of my first experience to Piper, not really knowing his back history, anything like that. I really do remember when he came back at WrestleMania 5 and had that Morton Downey Jr. Segment. I really remember that. Then my time of Roddy Piper really was his Intercontinental title run, his matches against the Mountie, his matches against Bret Hart. That is kind of when I think Roddy Piper, that is kind of my era I think of, with the longer hair, him with the shock stick against the Mountie. That was my prime Roddy Piper wrestling fandom. Obviously, I loved him as an announcer. I remember thinking it was crazy he was coming back to wrestle in WCW. I followed him through WCW. I've always liked Roddy Piper. A very cool and inspirational and game-changer character in the wrestling business, I think we would say. So nobody better right now, I felt, to do a top 5 than Roddy Piper. The stars have aligned. So we're going to kick it off. We're going to kick it off at number 5, and I'll probably have a few stories about a lot of these figures, as this is my personal top 5, remember. I ask you guys, put your top 5 in the comments below. Coming in at number 5 was a figure I never had as a kid. I never saw this on the store shelves as a little kid in my heart of my playing days. So it was always kind of a white whale and a missing figure in my wrestling figure collection as a kid, I always felt. And that is the LJN Roddy Piper figure. Say what you want about this figure, it's not the best looking Piper figure, but it could very well be his most iconic wrestling figure ever. With the removable kilt, but like I said, I never had this one, and it doesn't really look like him, but it felt like he was the main bad guy, or one of the main bad guys in the LJN days, and I always kind of felt like my LJN collection was a little bit incomplete without having a big name like Roddy Piper in it. I would have really enjoyed getting that Piper figure as a kid. Strange story about this one. It had to have been 1996, maybe 1997. I went to visit my grandma, and she had to go to some small town. She lived out in the country, and we went to another small town, and they had a Ben Franklin's. Some of you guys may know Ben Franklin's, a little department store, basically wiped off the face of the earth thanks to Walmart. They're still out there in some small cities. Not quite what they used to be, but they're still out there. But we were in this Ben Franklin's out in the middle of the country, and I'm wandering around. My grandma's getting her stuff, and all of a sudden I saw they had a discount basement. I'm like, what the heck? I walked down the stairs to this discount basement, and it was like the early 80s toys exploded down there. This is rural America. This is middle of nowhere, and they must have had cases and cases of figures and stuff down there, all unbought, all untouched. Think of this, 1997. I remember G.I. Joes, carded G.I. Joes for days. They had all kinds of stuff, old Transformers, G.I. Joe vehicles, but they also had LJN figures. Can you believe this is 1997, and this is on the pegs. No markup, no nothing. These are all discounted toys. And I remember telling my grandma, and we talk about grandmas on the channel all the time, they're always willing to buy you some stuff. And I ended up getting some G.I. Joe figures. That's what she bought me. You know, I was like 16 years old. I really should have been asking Grandma, can you please buy this toy for me? But I was like 16 years old. But I didn't have any money. I was working part-time, but you guys know how it is. They don't pay kids very much. We're basically slave labor. But I bought a few things. She bought me a couple G.I. Joes. But one figure I saw there was Roddy Piper LJN. And I wasn't really buying LJNs. I wasn't playing. I wasn't doing anything with my LJNs at the time. The great LJN purge was about 2 years away. But I just remember seeing this Roddy Piper mint on card sitting there. And it's been into my head ever since. And I can't believe I let that go. I just left it there, never to return. I remember going home and telling my dad about it and saying they had starting lineups. They had all this stuff. For some reason or another, we never made a return trip there. But I'll never forget that story. And I'll never forget seeing that. Just walking downstairs, all these toys from 10, 15 years prior, just sitting on the shelves. It's like a time capsule time machine. And I always wonder where all those toys ended up going. Did they throw them away? Did they give them away? Did they actually sell them? I doubt it. We're talking like a town of 1,000 people. I mean, there's not a huge influx of people in those towns. Anyways, there's a little story time with that. But this Roddy Piper was always somewhat of a white whale for me. I'm never going to tell anybody this is the best representation of Roddy Piper. But for nostalgia reasons, historical reasons, everything else under the sun in that story, and me never actually having him in the heart of my playing days, that's why this Roddy Piper LJN is number 5 for me. All right, we're at the number 4 Roddy Piper figure of all time in my top 5 Roddy Piper figure list. Number 4 is going to shock some of you guys. Some of you guys may not know this thing exists. Some of you guys may have it. Some of you guys probably forgot about it. But it is via Mattel. We're talking the Entrance Great. You guys remember the original Entrance Great figures from Mattel? These were actually basic figures dressed up, though. Bells and whistles on a basic figure. But the Roddy Piper here, this represents something pretty cool. The bagpipes here, the soft goods hot rod shirt, plays his theme. My only gripe is I wish it was the long-haired Roddy Piper. I say that. That is my favorite incarnation of Piper. This is more of the short-hair Piper. But this represents Piper with his bagpipes, getting all that in Mattel. I believe Toy Biz gave us some bagpipes one time. Those WCW Toy Biz figures, absolute garbage to me. I know some of you guys like them, and you like what you like. I understand that more than most. Those WCW figures do nothing for me. And the Piper with the bagpipe, no thanks. No thanks. But this one, a bit of a forgotten figure over the years. The original Entrance Great line when they were no longer elites. You can go back on my channel. One of the first videos I ever did. It's probably terrible, but hey, you go back and watch it. I walked through every single Entrance Great figure that was released. Deep dive, all in one video. Kind of precursor to the Jakks Classic Superstars series we're doing. But I do have a video that talks about just all the Entrance Greats from Mattel, and we look at all of them, talk about them, all that kind of fun stuff. But a very cool Roddy Piper. And this one sticks at me. This is number 4. When I went through my collection, I looked at all the Piper figures. This one really sticked out just because of the packaging, the bagpipes added, the soft goods here. It is a Mattel, so it does look a little bit more like him than, say, that LJN before. Then you get the sound playing with it. You can play the bagpipes. I'm not sure if the sound still works. We'll see. Let's see. There you go. Very cool, if you ask me. Love this Piper. I don't believe I have a loose one. I'd have to look. I feel like I may have this loose, but I grabbed my carded version, boxed version. But I love this Piper. I just looks so good. And now, I gotta think, and I've been calling it for a long time, I think it was in my most requested figures of 2020 video where I said, here's what I want to see in 2021. Ultimate Edition Roddy Piper. We're due for an Ultimate Edition Roddy Piper. Give us the soft goods. Give us a long-haired head, a short-haired head. Give us the bagpipes. Give us the kilt. There's so much they could do. They could throw some boxing gloves in there if they really wanted to as the extra hands. There's a lot they could do with an Ultimate Edition Roddy Piper. So Mattel, if you're listening, if you're watching, give us that Ultimate Edition Roddy Piper. Hopefully one day. I gotta think it's gonna happen. I gotta think it will. So there it is, number 4, the Mattel Entrance Great. All right, we're at number 3, and we got the lone entrant of my favorite series of all time. And you guys know what that is. Classic Superstars, my favorite line of all time. Hey, we got a video every Tuesday devoted to that line, so make sure you're checking those out if you haven't seen those yet. But one we haven't talked about in that video series yet, which will be coming to a video very soon, it is Roddy Piper, of course. That's what we're talking about. Classic Superstars Roddy Piper, a Toy Fair exclusive. 1 of 3,000. So Roddy Piper, 1 of 3,000, Toy Fair exclusive, coming in at number 3 on my personal top 5 Roddy Piper figures of all time. Obviously, I love the classic superstars, but take that out of it. This is Roddy Piper. I always say, close your eyes, imagine Roddy Piper. And Roddy Piper is a character you imagine a couple of different versions, just like Hulk Hogan. Some people close their eyes, they think of the red and yellow, some think NWO, some think both at the same time. When I close my eyes, I think of this type of Roddy Piper, and then I think of the Intercontinental title run, longer-haired Roddy Piper. That's what I think of. Two different characters is how they feel to me. Where some other characters, like the Ultimate Warrior, he's just one guy to me. I don't think of different eras and different time frames, different stuff. But Piper, I do. And this is a Piper I like a lot. I love the soft goods. I love the soft goods shirt, kilt, but then his leather jacket. Piper, Bret Hart, brought leather jackets to the coolness factor for little Kyle. I don't know if I would have ever thought, oh yeah, I need a leather jacket, but Bret Hart and Roddy Piper both wore leather jackets, both looked really cool. I remember wanting a leather jacket at like 8 or 9 years old. I remember telling my dad, can I get a leather jacket? And he's like, what do you do with a leather jacket? They're like $500 or whatever they were. He goes, you can just have your little starter jacket or whatever it is. You're good enough with that, I think. I don't think you take care of a leather jacket. And you know what? He's right. He was right. But Piper rocked the leather jacket like nobody else's business. Always looked cool. And this figure just represents that. It represents this. And Mattel, they've had some good Pipers, some good Pipers. One great Piper, the rest are good, if you ask me. I haven't seen a definite Roddy Piper figure from Mattel so far. We've had some basics, we've had some head scans that are a little questionable. The Hall of Fame one represents the era I like the most. That was a Target exclusive. That one just, something fell a little flat for me on that one. It's just not going to be on the top 5 list for me. Spoiler alert, I guess. But I would love to see them try to enact this one. And that's where we could go back to the Ultimate Edition. Give us a couple extra heads. Give us a couple of different shirts, possibly. This is the Roddy Piper Panther shirt, as you guys know. Very famous Panther shirt. I think I might have said this is a soft good shirt. It's not, but it's a soft good leather jacket in here. But there it is. This is a 1 of 3,000. This was released at the same time as the 1 of 100 boxing Roddy Piper, which I also have in my collection. That's a really cool piece, a 1 of 100, very cool, but the big boxing gloves take that one out of the rankings for me. Just doesn't work so much. But this one, this exclusive, the 1 of 3,000, it's funny, this one was everywhere back in the day. I remember, feel like you could get this from everybody. It was like 20 bucks. I don't want to say nobody wanted it, but it kind of felt like nobody really wanted it. But now, goes for a pretty penny, a pretty awesome figure, and that's why it is in my top 5. All right, we've come to number 2. You guys got your guesses ready? You guys taking bets on this? You called Vegas and get the odds in. Number 2 goes back. This is, once again, my top 5. This is mine. You give me your top 5 in the comments. This one goes back to my nostalgia of my childhood. When I think Roddy Piper figures, this is usually the first one I think of. I spent so many days and hours and months and years playing with this figure in my collection, and it's no other than the Hasbro Roddy Piper. There he is right here. This is the Piper, like I always say, the longer hair Piper was always my favorite. That's kind of the time frame it represented. Had a lot of great matches with the Mountie, Bret Hart, Hulk Hogan, everybody under the sun. I remember him and Ted DiBiase #1 had a long summer-long feud in my Fig Fed when I was a little kid. I remember these two just wanted to murder each other, and I was booking out the territory and all that kind of stuff, and Andre the Giant would come in, and other people. Ted was the last guy he'd finally get to. He had to work his way through Ted and all of his hired people. I remember it was a big storyline. You had to be there. You had to be there. But I'm sure a lot of you guys did that as well. But I love this Roddy Piper. And it's funny, all these years later, we talked in the Legion of Doom top 5. Obviously, the Hasbros were in there for me. That a lot of people said, oh, I liked him, but I didn't like him because of the spikes and stuff. And it never bothered me. And over the years, I've seen the same commentary about the Roddy Piper. I don't like that he's got his shirt and his kilt on. I don't like it. It took it away from me. Once again, never did anything to me. Never stopped my playing days. Never harmed anything for me. I was always totally fine with it. I never had an issue. And this one is probably in my top 5 Hasbros of all time, just because I was such a big Roddy Piper fan during this time of my life. And I also, talking about Ted DiBiase #1, I don't know if I paired those up because one was a face, one was a heel, but at the same time, they were kind of similar height. They were both smaller type Hasbro figures, if that makes sense. They always felt a little smaller than some of the other ones. It just felt like they had great chemistry between their two figures. They played well together. You know, sometimes two figures match up just based on the Hasbro days. And just they fit together into wrestling moves well. And that Ted DiBiase #1 and this Roddy Piper, I always felt really good together. So I really do enjoy this Roddy Piper, as you can imagine. A lot of nostalgia goggles with this one, of course, but that's why it's part of my top 5. But that is number 2. What could be my number 1 personal Roddy Piper figure of all time? Well, it's up next. All right, we've come to the number 1 spot, and I'm shocked. When I was looking at my Roddy Piper collection of all the figures I have, of what came out on top. I guess I wouldn't have guessed this at the beginning, but it was clear. I always put my list together, I let it marinate for a day, and then I say, okay, this is the definitive Roddy Piper list for me. This is my list, of course, and this could change. Who knows? We do Roddy Piper 5 years from now, it could be a totally different list. You know, sometimes you start liking something a little bit more or liking something a little bit less. New things come out, so there's always a chance these lists could change. Some of the heavy hitters probably will never change, but Roddy Piper very well could change. I do feel like Roddy Piper's best figure is still upon us. I keep referencing a hopeful Ultimate Edition, and I hope that is the best Piper of all time. Wait and see. Fingers crossed from Mattel. But number 1 right now is a surprise that nobody would probably have. I'm sure nobody would guess this when you're trying to guess my top 5. And it is actually the latest Mattel Roddy Piper figure. It is from the 2-pack with Mr. T, the boxing Roddy Piper. This figure is next level. I referenced that 1 of 100 Jakks Classic Superstars Roddy Piper. Well, that's a cool moment in time figure. It's a 1 of 100. It's a special figure. It had the oversized boxing gloves. It looks like he's at like some kid amusement park or something. This is the definite boxing Roddy Piper. That Mr. T 2-pack, next level. I absolutely love that Mr. T in there. I like that Mr. T more than the San Diego Comic-Con Mr. T. That's how much I like it. I do have a little bit of an issue with the legs on this one, a little bit loose out of the package on the left leg for this Piper, unfortunately. But I really should buy a secondary set of this Mr. T Roddy Piper. It's such a cool set. But just the soft goods robe here with the hot rod on the back, how cool does that look for me? Then the boxing gloves. To get scaled elite boxing gloves that are molded, not just, you know, something you slip over, something like that. And then they're like interchangeable hands. I think that is next level. I just think that is super cool. You could use these with other elites. If you're a player as a kid, you could swap boxing hands on somebody else and have, you know, Braun Strowman versus Aleister Black in a boxing match if you wanted to. I just think that is super cool. But I just love this Piper. The robe is next level, but then the head sculpt. This could be Mattel's best head on a Roddy Piper so far. If they make that Ultimate Edition with the Panther shirt, leather jacket, that is the head I would love to see this Roddy Piper. It just, you know this is Roddy Piper. Where some figures over the years, you're like, it looks, you know who it's trying to represent. It just doesn't quite hit the mark. This one hits the mark across the board. This is one of the best figures that Mattel has released in the last few years, if you ask me, as a big Hot Rod fan. I just hope, like I keep saying, we get an Ultimate Edition, we get some more Roddy Pipers, because I think they just haven't touched the iceberg of what we really need on Roddy Piper figures. But I'm very excited. This one was number 1, and I was, like I said, a bit shocked. I didn't think this one would come through the top, but the more I looked at it, the more I went through it, and that's the way it went in my list. So there it is, the Roddy Piper top 5 as voted by Kyle Peterson. But what say you? You guys in the comments, give me your 5 favorite Roddy Piper in order. No cheating. That's part of the fun. You got to put them in order. What's your top 5, 1 to 5? Roddy Piper figures. Put it in the comments below, and don't forget to like the video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to follow me on social media, Twitter at SirPaul64, Instagram _Kyle_Peterson, and then of course below thecollar.com. Get your very own Kyle Peterson t-shirt, and while you're there, get this Hot Rod shirt. Support Hot Rod, support Kyle Peterson, support the top 5, and we will be back next week with another Kyle Peterson top 5.